Hello, feisty warriors. Welcome back to Astrology by Janay. I am Janay Anthony. I'm a Hellenistic astrologer and tarot reader, and today we are talking about Mars in Aries. Now, Mars entered Aries yesterday. Yesterday was the 28th of June. I'm not looking at my calendar, so I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure it was the 28th of June. So Mars enters Aries, and it will stay in Aries until January 6th, 2021. And that is insane. You know, Mars usually only spends up to 6 weeks. 6 weeks in a sign, and this time we get 6 months of Mars in its home sign of Aries. And this is going to be, this is going to be a time. It's going to be a time. And I'm going to talk about what this time could look like for you, depending on your rising sign. So, if you want to learn more about Mars and Aries 2020, the whole overarching transit, you can click on the blog post I wrote about it. I will link it down below. And if you know your rising sign, stay tuned because I will tell you what this will mean for you. Aries. If your rising is in Aries, then this means that Mars has moved into your first house. And say you have your ascendant at 29 degrees Aries, it's still in your first house because I am using whole sign, okay? So Mars moving into your first house, this is actually pretty nice for you. You know, you have the ruler of your ascendant coming into dignity in your first house, and that can be very powerful. You know, you could feel this burst of energy where you're ready to go, you're ready to fight if a challenge arises in your life, you know, you're ready to take that on because you have all of this martial energy, you know, that go-getter energy where you're here and you're willing to take on whatever gets in your path, right? And this could be this could play out differently if, you know, you were born in the day or if you were born at night. If you were born during the day, this might be a little bit more challenging for you because Mars, of course, is the out of sect malefic for the daytime. So this could be like, this energy could manifest in headaches or migraines, you know. It could manifest as toothaches, especially when Saturn moves back into Capricorn and there's that sign-based square going on. You could very well get toothaches. That happened to me last year when Mars was in my first house. I also happened to be in a Mars perfected year, so that did not help because Mars is just very active for me. But yeah, Mars moving into your first house could cause, you know, physical pain in your body. It doesn't just have to be your head, it can be literally anywhere in your body. You might become very susceptible to sunburns, you know, because, you know, Mars is about fire and burns and, you know, cuts. So, you know, you might experience some accidents. If you're on the clumsier side, you might experience some accidents here or there and break skin, and you might see more blood than you're used to seeing. But, you know, regardless, Mars is still a warrior. So you have the strength to make it through, you know? Some people think bruises and scars are incredibly sexy. And so you can harness this Mars energy and just make yourself real sexy. If you were born at night, you might not experience some of those harsher delineations of Mars moving in the first house. Because Mars is the malefic of the sect for people born at night, you might experience it more constructively, you know, where you have, you know, that energy that I was talking about, and you're just full of energy. You know, you might feel the need to work out a little more. Your muscles might start to grow. If you want to put on some muscle mass, the next 6 months is a great time to do that, because Mars is just in your first house helping you build up that strength. So yeah, I think Mars in the first house can be completely hit or miss depending on if you were born on the day or at night. But if I can say anything, it's just wear a fucking helmet, okay? If you're gonna ride a bike, a motorcycle, do anything crazy, make sure you have your helmet on, okay? Because Mars loves injuries, and it's best just to protect yourself. And, you know, wear a helmet, and make sure you have, you know, a stock of band-aids hidden away, because you might need them at some point. Taurus, if you are a Taurus rising, this means that Mars in Aries is in your 12th house. And this could be just kind of a really weird time for you, you know? The 12th house is about spirituality, being isolated and separated from other people. It's about, you know, just inner work and focusing on you, like doing a deep spiritual dive within yourself. And when we have Mars in Aries moving into this place, it's very important to project yourself energetically, you know? If you're the type of person who believes in psychic vampires and, you know, malevolent spirits and whatnot, you know, you might want to find some crystals and wear them around your neck a little bit more because Mars in the 12th house can be incredibly draining, you know? Mars is a planet of energy, and the 12th house just seems to drain the energy of whatever is in it. So this could be a very draining time for you over the next 6 months. You know, if you think about just keywords that go with the 12th house and go with Mars, spiritual, 12th house, warfare, Mars, right? Spiritual warfare. So this could be something internal where, you know, maybe you're just battling within yourself, trying to figure out what your own spirituality looks like for you. This could also be coming from external sources, you know. The 12th house is the house of hidden enemies. So you might find out that someone who you thought you could trust, who you thought was your friend, you might find out that they actually have been doing some really shitty stuff behind your back and you never knew about it until right now, especially once the retrograde starts, right? The retrograde will bring up so many things for so many people, but especially for you, Taurus rising, Mars in the 12th house going retrograde, it's gonna bring up stuff that you didn't even have any inkling about, right? It will seemingly come out of left field. So this will be different depending on if you were born during the day or at night. If you were born during the day, then Mars is the out of sect malefic for you. So it may just be a very challenging time where you really have to put your defenses up because you find yourself in this very vulnerable place, right? So when we're vulnerable, if you're not willing to fight, a lot of times it's either you or them. You have to stick up for yourself. And, 12th house placements do not like to fight at all. But sometimes it's necessary for self-preservation. And if you were born at night, this transit might be a little bit more functional for you, right? Good for you, because Mars is not fun. It's not fun when Mars is against you, So with Mars on your side, you could experience that more as building up that strength, finding, that courage to express your spirituality the way that you authentically feel like expressing it, Because Mars in Aries does not like to answer to anybody, right? So being comfortable with your spirituality and what that path looks like for you, and not taking shit from anyone else when they say, "Oh, are you sure that's what you want to do?" Yes, it's what you want to do, because you've done the inner work and you know the path that you're meant to go down. In that less spiritual way, because not everybody is spiritual, and that is completely okay. This could be, being on the forefront of, we're in a pandemic right now. So it could be being on the forefront of that pandemic. Maybe you'll sign up to be a contact tracer. Maybe you'll get a volunteer position at a hospital, right? Because hospitals are 12th house places. And, you could be fighting for other people who are in need. I also think about if you have gotten sick from COVID and you have recovered, maybe you'll find out that you're able to donate your plasma for the next 6 months, right? Because I'm not sure if plasma is specifically ruled by Mars, but plasma is in the blood, and blood is ruled by Mars. So I'm just gonna say that, it's ruled by Mars in this instance. And a lot of times blood can be the difference between life and death for some. Well, a lot of times blood literally is the difference between life and death, but giving your blood to someone else could be giving life to someone else, and that is a beautiful Mars in the 12th house thing. So if that is something you can relate to, definitely consider it, because if you could save a life, that would be an amazing gift for that person. Gemini rising. Mars in Aries is your 11th house. So the 11th house is the house of friendships, social networks, technology to some extent, specifically the internet, and hopes and dreams that you have for your future, right? So Mars bursts into Aries, into your 11th house. So what does this mean? This means that there might be a lot of internet drama going on. People like to troll on the internet. You might find yourself some martial little trolls coming after you if you're a Gemini rising. And you know what? You're a Gemini rising. You know how to fight back with wit, right? So look out for that. This could also be challenging things coming up for, network circles, as the states are reopening up, either for better or worse, right? More people will be going back into work, yet there's still so many people who are vulnerable, like the immunocompromised population. Like, they might not be able to go back to work, and then we have this weird dichotomy of people are in the office, yet they're at home, and we have to connect over the internet and technology still, and this is just a completely new experience for everyone. And, you know, oftentimes things that are new can be challenging. Thus Mars, right? And it could be, you know, that challenge within your social network, your professional network. It could also be challenges or arguments between friends. You know, it's summer. People like to hang out with their friends in the summer and enjoy the weather. But it's important to be careful, right? Especially in these times, acting impulsively can get you in a lot of trouble. So you might have friends who are acting impulsively. Your friends might think you're acting impulsively, and it could just lead to a lot of arguments and a lot of drama that you just don't want to deal with. And this could change depending on if you're born during the day or at night. If you were born during the day, then this just might prove to be a very challenging time for you, right? Because Mars is the malefic counter to the day sect, which means it's naturally going to cause more problems for you wherever it goes. And so this might be that experience of getting in arguments with friends or coworkers, right? Like it's not the prettiest thing. Mars in the 11th could also be testing your altruism, right? With all the protests going on, everybody has opinions about everything, and there is a very specific type of activist who is accepted, and if you do something just a little bit not in line with that accepted ideal image of an activist, then people will immediately call you out and want to tear you down. So if you are an active, political, social, any type of activist, you might want to be careful about what you say and what you put out there, because people who look up to you or just your colleagues or the general public might be a little bit more judgy about things than usual. If you were born at night, Mars is working much more in your favor, and that is because Mars is contrary. Nope. That is because Mars is the sect of the nighttime sect. Mars is the malefic of the nighttime sect. Just had to make sure I said that right. So yeah, this could be just an invigoration to go out and stand up for what you believe in and have, you know, that public display of activism. Maybe you'll experience protesting for the first time, or you might just, even if you're not going out into the public and being part of the protest, you know, you're not one of the bodies out on the street, maybe you find other ways to contribute to the cause, and you know, you're just so riled up and you just want to show your support as much as possible. That could be an energy that comes into play. This could also be like a rallying of your friends. It doesn't have to take on a political context or a social context. It could simply be, you know what? I'm struggling right now and my friends are standing up for me and they're fighting for me. And that's a beautiful thing, right? Yeah, it's like you have the support of your network systems all coming to back you up, right? If you listen to the day portion, then, you know, when I was talking about people, like the public, they just being up in arms and ready to tear someone down at the slightest inconvenience. On the opposite side of that, you could have that mob mentality in your favor and have people fiercely defending you. especially on the internet, right? That's kind of what I was talking about in this conversation here. But yeah, overall, Gemini risings, Mars in the 11th is going to be a ride. It's not ending till January, so I hope it goes well for you. Cancer rising, Mars in Aries is in your 10th house for you. It is in an angular house, which means this will likely be a very prominent transit for you. The 10th house is a house of career, public image, legacy, right? And Mars coming into your 10th house, it could be testing that, right? It could be testing what you want. It could be testing what you've built up over however long, right? So Mars moving through the 10th house, it can bring challenges to, if you own a business, you might experience some, challenges. I need to find a better word for challenges, but some problems with sustaining your business, because Mars in Aries has a lot of energy, just like that motorcycle revving outside. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but Mars in Aries has a lot of energy, right? But it's energy that comes all at once and then it dissipates. So you might find it difficult to sustain things that you thought you had the power to do. Mars in the 10th can also challenge your public image and what people think of you. Mars is a warrior planet and likes to fight. And, Aries is a pretty aggressive sign, so maybe you're coming off more aggressively than you actually are, or maybe you actually are more aggressive than usual because, you're a Cancer rising and people like to think that they can walk all over you, and then when you finally stick up for yourself, nobody sees it coming, right? How Mars will play out will be different whether you were born during the day or at night, because of Sect. If you were born during the day, Mars is the out of Sect malefic, which means Mars does not like to be your friend. Mars he likes to cause trouble for you if you were born during the day. So if Mars is moving through your 10th house and you were born during the day, this could be, those more negative or challenging manifestations where, you're having a lot of trouble with your business. Maybe there's actual damage to your business if you have like a brick and mortar shop. Personally, I do not think that protests are going to end anytime soon. And if your business is in the vicinity of some of those protests, there is a chance of, your business being looted or being burned to the ground. Even if it's not by a protest, there still is a risk of fires. So be careful about that. Make sure you've got your insurance up on the up and up. So yeah, just be careful. This kind of leads me to believe that Mars would bring more damage to your business, more so than to you personally, if you are a business owner. If you're not, then this could just simply have to do with your public image and how people perceive you. Now, if you were born at night, Mars is acting a little bit more functionally. It could be, people rallying around your business, right? With just such vigor. Like, especially, I think about Black-owned businesses and how now more than ever, people are so dedicated to supporting Black-owned businesses, and how if you are a Black business owner and people know that about you, they will defend you, right? Mars is a warrior and he goes out on the offensive all the time, but Mars will also defend what he cares about. So this could just be people defending the integrity of your business, or defending your integrity if you don't own a business. But either way, this isn't going to end until January, so be careful. And, you know, if people are supporting you, make sure to thank them, because as a 10th house placement, Mars wants recognition here. So if Mars is serving you, be sure to thank Mars in whatever form that is, whether if it's customers, a friend, your family, whatever it is, make sure to give thanks. Leo rising. Mars is entering your 9th house. This is also my placement, so I'm just as curious to see what this will hold as you are. But if we think about this, right? Mars moving into the 9th house. What is the 9th house? The 9th house is higher education, it's philosophy, it's world travel. You know, just some very hot button topics right now due to the pandemic, right? We have lots of universities not having in-person classes, and students being very upset about that and fighting with being charged full tuition, right? Mars and Aries, or just Mars. Mars likes to fight. We have travel being just not free and open at all. Like, it was yesterday or 2 days ago where the EU just announced that they have a restricted list of who they're allowing to travel into, you know, the European Union. And I am American, so excuse my American-centric mind, but Americans aren't allowed, right? And there's a very certain type of American who feels very entitled and gets offended when they are told that they are not allowed to go to a certain place. So yeah, Mars moving into our 9th house. Ooh, it's starting to thunder. Mars moving into our 9th house is, you know, just kind of taking that battle and having it philosophically, right? Because the 9th house also rules philosophy and religion. So, you know, there could be a battle of philosophies. Lots of people are going out and protesting for what they believe in, and it is very possible that those conflicting beliefs can butt heads a little bit. And you might be witness to that, or you might feel that a lot more than, you know, people with different rising signs. Going back to school, like I know this is how it's gonna play out for me, because I'm currently in grad school and struggling. But doing schoolwork, getting into school, it might be a difficult process for you. Especially if you were born during the day, right? Because depending on if you were born at day or at night, that changes how Mars is functioning for you. If you were born in the day, Mars is the out of sect malefic, meaning that Mars doesn't like to play nice. Mars likes to give you as many challenges as he possibly can. So, in terms of education, you may find that things are falling through with your degree or your program. This could be, you know, the program you're in falling apart. When I was in undergrad, there was this whole department in my school that just disappeared due to not having enough funds And then the students in that department were just screwed and they didn't have any other options. There could be stuff like that going on, especially because a lot of schools are underfunded, and you know, some students are choosing not to even go to school this year because, you know, pandemic. It's not a pretty picture for a lot of students. And you know, because I am a student, I feel this a lot and I'm just rambling about it, so I'll move on to other topics. Philosophy, religion. This could also be religious warfare and attacks against your belief system, right? Because the ninth house is where we identify our higher knowledge, and that could be, you know, education or spiritual knowledge. And when people when people test your faith, it can be very crippling, right? Or it can ignite you. And I have a lot of my own ninth house baggage, so I might just be speaking to myself here. But, you know, you might have to defend yourself and defend what you believe in and why you believe in it. And that's never fun, but at the end of that process, you feel so much more connected to your beliefs and you have them stronger than ever. If you are born at night, Mars is working in your favor. So you might experience a more constructive Mars transit. Like I was saying, the process of having to defend your beliefs against someone can bring you closer to those beliefs and just make you feel stronger in what you believe in. And that can be a really beautiful thing. And that can be the type of process that Mars can give you in the ninth house, where, you know, the process of constantly having to defend yourself, you know, from all these attacks from every which way, it can be tiring. But you know what? You believe in what you believe in very strongly, and defending your beliefs is worth it. So yeah, that can be what you can expect for the next 6 months until January. Oh, this transit just began, and please send me good vibes, good educational vibes. Help me get through my next semester of grad school, because I feel like this next upcoming semester is going to be a difficult one, and I need all the help I can get, so please send help. Thanks, bye. Virgo rising. If you are a Virgo rising, then Mars just moved into your 8th house. The 8th house is about other people's money, death, taxes, inheritance, just all those fun things that we love to talk about. Isn't that right? It also has to do with sex to some extent, but not the fun kind of sex, the deep, emotional, intimate type of sex, right? Well, that can still be fun. I meant it's not the casual kind of sex. This is the deep sex. So Mars moving here into your 8th house. This can be a challenge, right? We have a malefic planet going into one of the quote-unquote bad houses. And this doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? It just means it can manifest more challenging than if it were in another place. So with Aries in the 12th, not the 12th, Aries in the 8th house and Mars moving in here, there could be challenges surrounding money, specifically government money. You know, I think about how in America, every tax-paying American supposedly got a relief check, right? And supposedly, right? And supposedly, we're supposed to get another one. But if you're a Virgo rising, you might find that your check is taking forever to come through. Perhaps your check just doesn't show up, and having to track it down and actually receive it becomes a very time-consuming challenge. Especially with the retrograde that will happen, things are not going to run smoothly from point A to point B. It's going to be a process, and you're gonna have to go back and forth and redo shit all in that process just to get to that final point. So especially if this is manifesting in a money type of way for you, that can be very frustrating because a lot of people are struggling with money right now. The 8th house also has to do with death. Now, I am not an astrologer who predicts death. I do not believe that every transit through the 8th house means death, because if it did, then we all be dead within the first month of life when the moon transits our 8th house for the first time, right? So that's not what 8th house transits bring. 8th house transits do not bring literal death, but they can bring a heightened awareness to death, right? If you have not been paying attention to mortality rates in your area, it may just so happen that you notice them starting to go up, or if they're not going up, then you just realize the impact of that number and, you know, how many lives are actually being lost. Like, through the awareness of death, life can become so much more meaningful for you. And not only can it become more meaningful, it can also become more scary, because when you realize that you're gonna die, that he's gonna die, that everybody is eventually going to die, that's a very scary thought if it's not something that you've processed before. And so that is why the 8th house can kind of be a depressive house, because that is a lot to take in and contemplate, especially if you're doing all of that work for the first time. And so this will be different depending on if you were born during the day or at night. Mars is the out of sect malefic for daytime chart people. And so, you know, if you were born during the day, Mars does not like to be your friend, like, really at all. Everything else being equal, Mars will just cause challenges for you as much as he possibly can if you were born during the day. So in the 8th house, this could literally be, you know, taking an axe to your finances. Well, not your finances, but perhaps your partner's finances, and suddenly, by some fluke, you know, these resources that you thought were available to you are no longer available to you. It could be just really hard times, you know, especially psychologically. Mars in the 8th house is not the best for a healthy psyche, so be careful about paranoia, right? The 8th house can be a very paranoid place, and sometimes sometimes that paranoia can be justified, but sometimes it's just you in your own head, and you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and it gets scarier for you, but it also gets scarier for the other people around you as they watch you sink deeper and deeper into this thing that doesn't make sense for them. So yeah, don't get too paranoid. A psychological breakdown could be possible if this is manifesting in a mental health type of way, because Mars is a very stressful planet, and if you don't have an outlet for that, it will just explode on you. And you could have a psychological break. You could have, you know, just bursts of anger and rage that come out of nowhere, that just rise up from your depths. You know, especially during the retrograde, past anger and past hurt that wasn't dealt with might come shooting up to the surface. So do your inner work, talk to your therapist, because you don't want this to take you off guard, because it can be very scary for you and for the people surrounding you. If you were born at night, then Mars is a little bit more functional for you. It doesn't do good things per se, but it is, you know, it's the malefic of the sect, so it's just more constructive. It will still be a challenge, but at the end of the day, instead of it just being a challenge for the sake of challenge, you might get a little reward after, or you might experience some growth. So in the 8th house, you know, like I was talking about the checks, if you had to run through all these hoops just to get your money, you might actually get your money at the end of the day. And, you know, it's that, and now you know how to deal with it going forward if it ever happens again. If we're talking about the psychic space, right, this could be experiencing that anger, acknowledging that anger, and becoming comfortable with it. Because especially in American society, for everyone generally, but especially if you're a female or were conditioned as female growing up, you were conditioned to ignore your anger and repress it. And when Mars goes retrograde, you know, with retrogrades, we have to think about all the re-words, you know, redo, revisit, repress. And so retrogrades awakened repressed things. And with Mars, it awakens repressed anger. So it's a very painful process, discovering an emotion that has been repressed for years and years. It is very painful. It can cut you emotionally, and you may bleed emotionally. But until that wound is taken care of, right, you won't be able to heal from it. But, you know, if you do the work, healing is completely possible, and you can move on and become so much stronger and so much more resilient from experiencing that pain. And that is just a couple of the things you may experience with Mars moving through your 8th house. Libra. If you are a Libra rising, then Mars in Aries is in your 7th house. The 7th house is about relationships, one-on-one partnerships, you know, enemies to some extent. So with Mars moving through your 7th house, this, you know, just super basic symbolism. Mars in the 7th house could be very turbulent relationships or fighting within a relationship. And even if you're single, this can still manifest as perhaps arguing with, you know, your best friend, or, you know, just turbulence in what you feel a relationship could be. Like your idea of a relationship might, you know, be challenged. Like me, personally, I am a non-monogamous person, right? And say I were a non-monogamous person, but I was in a monogamous relationship and I experienced this transit, my idea of a monogamous relationship would be totally challenged, because we have Mars moving through this area in our charts where you know, we're meant to be challenged. We're meant to have to fight for whatever house it's moving through. So that was just an example that has nothing to do with my own chart personally, but I think that was, you know, a good example of how this could play out. And Mars is a very feisty planet, and Aries is a very feisty, independent sign. So you may feel yourself wanting to be independent from relationships. That's regardless of if you're single or not, right? Say this has nothing to do with romantic relationships for you, and we're just talking about, you know, one-on-one relationships. People might be exhausting you, right? You might just want to cut people off left and right, like all these people you thought were your best friends. You've had enough, and you just cut them out because Mars cuts things. I don't know what this is, but whatever. Mars's goal is to just ravage whatever he can, and if that's, you know, close relationships for you, that is probably going to be a painful process. Especially depending on if you were born during the day or at night. The way that Mars acts for you can be, you know, it differs based on sect. For people born during the day, Mars is the out of sect malefic, which means he generally does more harm than good, is a bit more painful than for people born during the night. So if you're born during the day, you might experience that feeling of just being cut from a relationship or wanting to cut relationships out of your life. Because, you know, when you're born during the day, Mars tends to be that more aggressive type of energy where it's just going to destroy whatever it comes across. Figuratively. If you were born at night, it could be a more functional process for you where you fight within yourself to figure out what the ideal relationship looks like to you, you know? And your natal Mars placement will have a lot to do with this, because it rules your 7th house. So maybe this is the type of energy you need, right? Sometimes we need to just go in and cut off the access and the things that are not serving us. And that could be, you know, in terms of ideas that we have about love, about relationships, about soulmates, that maybe they're not the healthiest ideas, and Mars can help us realize that by slicing those ideas out of our life. But yes, this will be a 6-month process, so don't expect to know all the answers right away, because this does not end until January of next year, so you've got plenty of time to figure out your love life, lovely Libras. Scorpio, if you are a Scorpio rising, that means Mars in Aries is your 6th house. Now, the 6th house is the house of health. It's the house of, you know, daily routines and environments, pets, you know? And Mars is the warrior planet, and he just loves to get in there and fight whatever he can get his hands on. So what does this mean? Mars in the 6th house could be, you know, fighting or defending your health. Fighting for or defending your health, right? If we think about the inside of our bodies, our immune system is what fights off disease for us. So, this doesn't mean that you will get sick. In fact, Mars in the 6th house could mean you have a boost to your immune system, because there's all this combative energy where if something is invading your body, your immune system will just, bam, take it out right away, because you have so much of this warrior energy around you. That would depend on other things in your chart, of course. But, your health might become a major focus. It could also be, like your routines. Things in life have changed so dramatically. Like, every month there's something new, and then you have to adjust your routine to whatever that new thing is. So maybe in the past, adjusting was difficult for you. And with this Mars energy, you're like, you know what? Change is gonna come. I can handle that. We're gonna take on that change. We're gonna beast that change, because Mars is a fucking beast, right? Mars can inspire you to just keep on going regardless of what's happening. And this will be different whether you're born during the day or at night. If you are born during the day, Mars does not like to be your friend. In fact, he likes to cause as many challenges as he possibly can, because he is the out of sect malefic. And that can it can be hard, it can be painful, and it can be really annoying, right? I was born during the day. I can get so annoyed with Mars sometimes for just destroying what I thought I was going to do. But yeah, Mars in the 6th, for day people, it might be that challenge of having to defend against sickness, or having to, for some reason or another, being combative with co-workers. It can just be more of that manifestation of fighting, arguments, aggression coming your way. I should say this too, because, aggression is not aggression, but anger is an emotion. And we often, hold emotions in our bodies. And, where are we holding the anger in our body? If we're unaware of that, it might become abundantly clear when Mars enters your 6th house, and, your stomach starts hurting for some strange reason, and you don't even understand, because you've been eating green all week and there is no reason for you to have a stomach ache right now. Except, damn Frank. Frank has been so annoying this past month, and I just can't handle Frank anymore, right? But maybe you don't connect your annoyance and aggression towards Frank to the stomach ache you're having. That could be a very Mars in the 6th house type of thing, where stuff in your environment is affecting your health. So be sure to clean. Cut out anything that is like not serving your body or your health, because if you keep too many things in access, then it's not the prettiest of pictures. If you were born during the nighttime, then Mars is the insect malefic for you. Well, insect, not exactly, but it is the malefic of the sect, I should say. And so that means Mars is working more functionally for you. Where are my words going? And I know, as like a 6th house placement, my lack of grammatical success might bother you, and I apologize. But anyways, if you were born during the night, this could be a very constructive time, right? We were just talking about cutting out the things that don't serve you. And with Mars in the 6th, you might be really inspired to do that, and you might notice those things much more quicker because, you know, Mars is about survival. Mars in Aries is about survival. And so if there's something that's contributing to you not being able to survive, Mars in Aries energy can see that really quickly and take care of it. So yeah, this will be an ongoing process. This transit does not end until January. So we have lots of time to just clean out those things that aren't serving you. And, you know, by the end of this transit, you might feel a lot lighter. You might finally have dealt with Frank. And, you know, you can move on. Sagittarius rising. If you are a Sag rising, then Mars is in your 5th house. Yay! And the 5th house is this house of fun, parties, gambling, and children. Based on how I describe the 5th house, you might guess that I am not currently a mother. So children, creativity, casual sex partners. It is a fun house. The 5th house is a fucking fun house, right? And so Mars moving in here, you might just be feeling so much energy, and you might just be wanting to go, like, right? You're a Sag rising, you've been stuck at home for 3.5 months, and you just want to go out and have a party for once, right? And, you know, everyone loves to have fun, but Mars is also a malefic planet. And so going out and partying might be dangerous, especially if you do it impulsively and don't take the time to plan out what your party is gonna be. You don't take the time to plan how you can safely hang out with other people. There might be consequences for that. And this will vary widely depending on if you have children. This might be a more a transit more directed at your children that they are experiencing more than you are. But if you don't have children, this could just be about you, and how you experience it will change on whether you were born during the day or at night. If you were born during the day, then Mars is the out of sect malefic for you. And that means Mars just likes to be as challenging as he possibly can, and he is not your friend. Mars for day people, specifically Mars in the 5th house, could be, you know, challenges to your creativity. If we think about artists, Mars in the 5th house could be someone plagiarizing your work, just straight up stealing what you made, and you having to fight to get your art back. It could be in the same vein, if you have children, your children just being so aggressive for, you know, some reason. Maybe you know exactly where their aggression is coming from. Maybe you don't understand it, but your kids might be more temperamental than they usually are, just because there's so much agitation in the air, you know? If you were born at night, this might work a little bit more functionally for you. You might just throw a really kick-ass party. I personally would advise against throwing parties, but you're a Sag. You're not going to listen to what I have to say. But yeah, Mars in the 5th for someone who's born at night, it could just be, you know, doing martial things for fun. So do you like to fight for fun? Maybe. Maybe it's not a bar fight. Maybe it's like karate or kickboxing. I love kickboxing. I have Mars and Leo in the first house. So I like to throw those punches, and it's not at other people. It's just completely for fun. And so finding a martial activity to do to express yourself could be very beneficial. And you know what? We have 6 months of this transit, so you might really get to hone your skills in these next 6 months. And, you know, come back in January and let me know what martial things you decided to do, because I'm sure whatever it is, it will be a crazy story. And nobody can tell a crazy story like a Sagittarius can. So I really want to hear what that will all be about. Capricorn rising. If you are a Capricorn rising, then Mars is entering your 4th house. And, you know, this is an angular transit, so it might be very prominent for you, especially if you are otherwise ruled by Mars in another way, or if Mars is activated for you by perfection or zodiacal releasing or etc., etc. There's lots of different ways to have an active planet. But anyways, Mars moving into the 4th house. This probably won't be fun. You know, we like to have security in our 4th house. We like our 4th house to be as stable as it possibly can be, and Mars is not a stable energy at all. And so Mars moving into the 4th house, this could look like, you know, fighting within the family. It could just be not necessarily fighting, but everyone is so fucking fed up with each other because you've all been stuck at home, and it's like you just need some space. You need some separation from your family a little bit, right? Mars is a planet that likes to separate things. So with Mars moving into your 4th house, you may find that your family is suddenly really annoying and you need to get away. And unfortunately, if you can't get away, that is what will lead to the fighting. So if you notice that things in your house are getting really tense and people are just starting to get agitated, if you have a place of authority in your household, right? Like if you're a parent, maybe just suggest your kids separate for a little while, like send them to separate rooms, because having people be apart is what Mars likes to do. So if you serve that energy of Mars, it's easier to handle rather than if Mars just comes in and does what it's gonna do, right? If you take control of the situation, it will work out a lot more in your favor. Mars can also signify burns and fires. So you should be very careful of leaving candles unattended to, smoking in your house. It might be a little bit more of a hazard than it typically is. Check the batteries on your smoke detectors, please. Carbon monoxide detectors as well. Because, you know, I never predict anything, you know, dire like that would happen, but there is an increased chance because of the energy that is currently surrounding you in your life. So we can take preventative action to make sure that the worst of the worst is not what comes to pass. So change the batteries in your smoke detectors, take care of that, and hopefully, if God forbid anything does happen, you are prepared and you can get out safely. So depending on if you were born during the day or at night, that will you know, shift how Mars is acting in your chart. If you're born during the day, then Mars is the out of sect malefic for you, which means that Mars likes to, he just likes to destroy things. Sometimes Mars can be functional, and sometimes Mars is just like taking a hammer to everything you've built and just whacking at it, you know? If you were born during the day, Mars is a whacker. So yeah, if you were born during the day, then there might be a bit more of those challenges that you expect with Mars, right? That argumentation, aggression, fires and burns. Like, be careful when you're cooking in the kitchen. Make sure you have your oven mitts on, you know, before you take anything out of the oven, right? Just take all those precautionary measures to make sure that you don't hurt yourself or that someone else in your home doesn't hurt themselves. Because Mars loves to cause accidents. And accidents can be very painful sometimes, even if they're not the biggest thing. You could get like a small cut on your hand, and you know, it's just a small cut, it's not gonna kill you, but it fucking burns until it heals over, you know? If you were born at night, this could be very functional for you. You could, you know, perhaps start a renovation project, right? We were talking about Mars whacking away at things with hammers. You could be whacking down a wall to make a bigger space. You could be hanging things up, like drilling holes in your walls, which is, you know, a controlled type of destruction. But, you know, you're still drilling a hole in your wall and it's not pristine anymore. But it could be for the sake of beauty and hanging up a beautiful piece of art. So just not destroying isn't a good word in this context, but, you know, puncturing things, that's a good Mars word, puncturing different parts of your home to, you know, make it feel more like home. But yeah, especially if Mars in the 4th is about renovation for you, you've got 6 months. So it might be a long process, especially with the retrograde. But you know, this goes on until January, so I have full faith that you will be able to figure out this transit, and I hope it will serve you. And let me know what you've been hanging up on your walls, because, you know, that would be a perfect thing for this transit. Aquarius rising. If you are an Aquarius rising, then Mars is in the then Mars will be entering your 3rd house in Aries. The 3rd house is about, you know, your neighborhood, your siblings, short distance travel, vehicles. So Mars in the 3rd house could be lots of disruptions to those things, right? If we're talking about, you know, sibling relationships, sibling rivalry, anyone, that is like a classic Mars in the 3rd interpretation. Siblings just competing against each other to, you know, be on top, is what Mars in the 3rd house is all about. So if you do have siblings, maybe there's just a lot more competition than usual. Or maybe there has always been competition, but it finally just comes to a boil and there's this huge spat that was years in the making, and, you know, it just finally happened and everybody saw it coming. And once it happened, it happened. The nice thing about Mars and Aries in general, well, more so about Aries than Mars. The nice thing about Aries is that it can be a very intense sign with very intense emotions, but they come fast and they dissipate fast. So, I mean, this may be a life-altering battle of the siblings, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to destroy the relationship. It can be something that every party can eventually get over, and you're my sibling and I love you, and I still kind of hate you, but we stick together because that's what siblings do. If we're talking about the neighborhood that you live in, or your local community, this could manifest as possibly destruction in your community. This was something similar I brought up with Mars going through the 11th in relation to protesting, and in the 10th a little bit too. It was actually Mars in the 10th in relation to protesting, and how businesses might get damaged from protests. Like your local community, well, not damaged from protests, but from damaged from looters or robberies or people who are starting fires, etc., etc. Those people are not protesters. It's important to point that out. But anyways, your community might become under siege, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a literal siege where, people are just fighting around every block. It could be a siege of ideals, where there is a lot of debate over whether you should be required to wear a mask because this is your community, and who are you to tell someone what to do in their own community, right? Like you, capital U, big pharma, government, whatever. You don't live here, I live here, so I am going to decide my own rules, right? Mars in Aries does not like being told what to do. And often when Mars in Aries is told what to do, it will go out and do the precise opposite to spite you, right? It could be completely subconscious or completely on purpose, because that's just what Mars in Aries does sometimes. It can have, childish whims. So yeah, there could be just that kind of ideal circulating throughout your community. Or, not specifically about masks, but you might see your community rally around something, because Mars is, Mars typically separates people and disperses people in relationships, right? But Mars in Aries is very, very invigorating. So people might feel invigorated to go out into their communities. And if the whole community is feeling this invigoration and going out, then they're suddenly all together, which is what I was getting at. So this will be very different based on if you were born during the day or if you were born at night. If you were born during the day, then Mars is the out of sect malefic for you. And that means that Mars typically does not do things to serve you as much as he could. If you were born during the day, then Mars is just, he likes to cause trouble. So Mars in the 3rd house for someone born during the day, you might feel actually very combative about going out into your community. It might not be as safe as it once was. You might have to, take extra steps to defend yourself just to, go outside and walk around the block like you normally would. There might be more of a threat. You know, that threat could be any number of things. That threat could be police. That threat could be neighbors. That threat could be the pandemic. Perhaps it's like getting worse in your area. It could be coming from anywhere, but there's some type of threat, and it might be scary. And the best thing you can do is prepare yourself. If you know there's a threat, then you can prepare on how to defend yourself from it. And, you know, if you're prepared, then you're more equipped to handle it and triumph over it, right? Like this, whatever this threat is for you, it doesn't have to destroy you. It could simply be something that makes you stronger. And the next time it comes up, you know exactly how to defend yourself against it. If you were born at night, then Mars in the third might be acting a little bit more functionally for you. This could be, you know, like we were saying before, where, you know, people are just so invigorated and, you know, even angry in some cases. There are so many communities right now who are just experiencing so much anger. But in those types of communities, that is something that bonds the community together, and, you know, they're more able to fight as a unit, right? Like, I think of people living in certain downtown neighborhoods and, you know, them just coming together against something like gentrification. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. My words have been all over the place today. You know what I mean. But, you know, the community really coming together and fighting against an outside threat, that is a very Mars in the third house type of energy. And maybe you're taking part in that coming together of neighbors and community members, right? Maybe you'll become a community leader in some, you know, some kind of way, because Mars in Aries is such a leader type of energy. Like, especially if Mars rules your MC, being a community leader while Mars is transiting the third house, or like taking on that role for a specific period of time, is a very possible manifestation of that energy. This transit is going to last for 6 whole months. That means once we hit January, about a week into January is when Mars will finally make its way out of Aries. And that means we have a lot of time to work with this energy. And, you know, you will be able to take it and do the most productive thing with it, because you are coming into this transit prepared. And when you are prepared for a transit, they tend to not be as difficult, or they tend to not knock you off your feet as far, because you already knew it was coming and you started preparing. So joke's on you, Mars. You can't knock me down forever. But yeah, I can get through it. You can get through it. We can all conquer this Mars transit. Pisces rising. If you are a Pisces rising, then this means that Mars in Aries is transiting your second house. The second house is the house of personal finance. It's the house of values, right? So that can be self-value and, you know, self-worth to some extent, but it's mostly just about those tangible values, those tangible valuables. So your assets, your jewelry that you have, that really nice vase that costs $5,000, that sort of valuable thing. It can also be about security and where we find security. And for most people, especially in the modern Western world, money is what brings us the most security. So it's the money house. And Mars is the planet, the warrior planet. So this transit might be manifesting as you having to defend your finances. I think about how in the pandemic, there have been lots of scammers going around and trying to swindle people out of their money. It's possible that one of those, awful people who are trying to scam the vulnerable might just come knocking at your door. Figuratively, not literally, but one of those swindlers may fall into your life, and you might want to think twice about investing your own money in something that feels uneasy. Definitely follow your instincts. This transit could also be, Mars likes to slash things, and your money might be slashed a little bit. I am not personally on unemployment, and that could arguably be an 8th house topic as well, but if you are on unemployment, those benefits are scheduled to end and your income is being slashed, right? And you'll have to figure out, well, granted, if Congress does nothing to prevent this from happening, but as things are going right now, it is a very, plausible outcome of you losing income if you have already, right? Because Mars will eventually be retrograde, so things that have happened in the past are going to come up and they might happen again, or the repercussions of that might happen again in some capacity, but there is going to be some sort of idea of a repeating, not wound, but a repeating cut or slash of some sort. So definitely look out for that. Defend yourself against people who do not have your best interest at heart, and just be careful with your money. This could also be burning money, not literally setting your money on fire, but spending money on frivolous things because you're doing so because you feel like it in the moment, and you know what? I have extra money right now. I'm just gonna spend it because I can. And I want this $6,000 vase because that $5,000 vase isn't really doing it for me anymore, right? So you need to look out for that. Like, keep a budget. If you don't budget, Pisces rising, please start budgeting over the next 6 months, because money could just not vanish per se, because since this is Mars we're talking about, Mars requires deliberate action. So you might just be spending your money consciously, right? Because Mars just does what it does, and it more or less takes responsibility for what it does. But you're just spending money, but you're just so caught up in your feelings of the moment that you're not realizing that, oops, actually, that money I had isn't quite there anymore because I've been spending it super fast, right? Mars in Aries is a very fast placement, and things come and go very quickly, and it's just, things will not remain consistent with Mars and Aries. So you have to pay attention, because if you don't pay attention, you'll look one day and your money will be gone. So this will change depending on if you were born during the day or at night. If you were born during the day, then Mars is the out of sect malefic for you. And that means that Mars typically likes to do more damage to you than it would if you were born at night. If you were born at night, then Mars is a little bit more functional for you, and you know, it'll give you a hard time, but you can work through the problems, right? So if you were born during the day, then everything I was just talking about is very, very relevant, because Mars wants to burn you. If you're born during the day, Mars wants to, you know, just cause as much damage as he can. So be careful, right? Make sure you have those preventative measures in place. You know, you might want to update your security stuff. So that could be changing passwords on your accounts, changing your locks, although that might be more of a fourth house thing, depending on, you know, if we're talking about the locks to your home. But updating your security, making sure there aren't breaches of security from outside threats, because that's also very possible. You know, losing a lot of money could be something of your own doing, but you know, it could also be an external thing, and there might be someone who just, you know, thrashes through your life and destroys the security that you've built up for yourself. So, like I was saying with other signs, the best way to make it through a transit is to prepare for it. So, change your passwords. Make sure you know where all of your keys are. Keep them close to your body when you go out. Make sure nobody is, you know, pickpocketing your wallet. Like, make sure you know where all these important things are and keep track of them, because that will be important. If you were born during the nighttime, that means Mars is the malefic of the sect. And like I mentioned, you guys can work things out and it's not always as hard for you. So, still, all of this stuff is relevant. But you may find that you did all this preparation and the transit was about just literally doing that prep work, because now you understand the value of security and you understand that, you know, you need to budget or keep track of things, or you might have found that breach in security, and if you hadn't taken that step, then down the line, then it would have been like much dire than it actually was. So yeah, this transit does not end until January 6th. So we've got quite a way to go with Mars in Aries, but you know, like I was saying, Mars in Aries, it moves fast. So this transit will be tumultuous probably, but it will go by just like that. And before we know it, we can relax a little bit. So yes, thank you for watching, everyone. If anybody made it to the end, good on you. I do not expect anybody to watch all 12 signs, because I wouldn't watch all 12 signs myself, because this is a very long video all compiled together. But anyways, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment down below about what you think this transit will be like for you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.